Joining us now on the line is KT McFarland, a national security expert for Fox News. KT, how are you this morning?
Just great. Thank you, guys.
You know, there are some negotiations ongoing with the United States and Iran, and according to the latest reporting on this, the idea the White House is pursuing right now is that Iran would freeze its nuclear program for 6 months to buy time for them to negotiate what they would consider a final settlement. And in return for that, apparently they're offering up relief from about $20 billion of the sanctions that are now in place. Is this something that the White House should be doing?
No, that's a sucker's deal. Look, we're going to have something's going to happen with Iran, and let's just talk about what's not going to happen. Iran is not going to be allowed to build a nuclear weapons arsenal and put it right on the shelf ready to deliver tomorrow. On the other hand, Iran is not going to completely dismantle its nuclear program. So somewhere in the middle of that is where we're going to end up, and the devil is in the details. The deal that you've talked about, where they pause temporarily for 6 months, they pause part of their nuclear program, and frankly, not even the most dangerous part. And we relieve some of the sanctions to the tune of probably ultimately $50 billion, maybe even more. That's a sucker's deal because it doesn't stop Iran from ultimately developing a nuclear weapon. Now, everybody's saying, well, let's just, we'll roll back the sanctions, the president said. You know something? That's about as credible as, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. Once all those companies feel they can do business with Iran, they will never roll back the sanctions. It was hard enough to get those countries and companies to agree to sanctions in the first place. And the minute it looks like there's any relief, they're going to stampede to do business with Iran. So that's the sucker's deal, and it's a lousy deal. Now, there's a second possibility, and that's that everything, the plutonium reactor, right, everything, freezes right in place, and we relieve sanctions. That's actually it's better than the sucker's deal, but it's not a terrific deal. Why? Because that means Iran stops just short of having nuclear weapons, whether it's weeks, months, but it's short of having nuclear weapons. And the other countries in the region say, well, look, Iran being an almost nuclear power is the same thing as being Iran, a nuclear weapons power. We're going to get nukes of our own. So then you have a nuclear arms race. The first option, the sucker's deal, Iran gets nukes. The second option is there's a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. The third option, which we should support, which I'm not even sure they're discussing, is that Iran rolls back part of its nuclear program of uranium and plutonium bomb-making deals, and in exchange we drop sanctions. That's the deal you want. I don't think that's the deal that Iran's going to give. And as far as the senators on Capitol Hill talking about new sanctions, I would welcome that, not because you really want new sanctions, but let's play good cop, bad cop. The Iranians do it all the time. Why can't we do it?
KT McFarland, speaking of this whole concern of other nations in the Middle East, and you raised the terrifying specter of a nuclear arms race in that region, what do you make of these stories that Israel and the government of Saudi Arabia could be working together secretly to plan a joint attack against Iran? Is that even conceivable based on your knowledge of the region?
Well, I think the Saudis and the Israelis have found common cause in not wanting a nuclear Iran and not wanting the political power as well as the military power, but the political power that accrues to Iran by being a nuclear weapons state, not just in the Persian Gulf, but throughout the Levant. Now, are they cooperating? I think only at peril to their lives would they be publicly cooperating on something, but they may be privately cooperating. I think that, however, once negotiations started, I think the Iranians very cleverly foreclosed that military option. What happens if Obama's negotiating with Rouhani of Iran, right? They're negotiating on a deal, the negotiations drag on, they start, they stop, but we're still negotiating. And Israel and Saudi Arabia or the countries in the region attack Iran, and the negotiations stop and Iran walks out, who's Obama going to blame?
Yeah, well, he'll find someone. Maybe he'll blame you, KT.
Other than Bush, the only one left is going to be Israel, and I think that as much as a nuclear Iran is an existential threat to Israel in the region, Israel on its own with no American alliance is even a greater existential threat. It shouldn't be.
The sitting duck, yeah. KT, there's another alliance there in the same region that is raising some eyebrows. Russia apparently has struck a deal to supply missiles to Egypt. Should we be worried?
Yeah, and I was just in Egypt a month ago and met with General el-Sisi, as well as senior leaders of all aspects of Egyptian society. They're mad at America. They feel that they did the right thing when they threw out the Muslim Brotherhood Al-Qaeda-affiliated leader, and they think America's turned their backs on them. So they feel like the spurned suitor. And this is a relationship that has kept the peace between Israel and the Arabs for 40 years. And both political parties, presidents of all variety, have worked hard to maintain that U.S.-Egyptian relationship, knowing that Egypt is the crown of the Middle East, is the crown of the Arab world.
Right.
As goes Egypt, so goes the region. And so Obama just is tossing it away when there's no reason to do it. I mean, as General Stacey said to me, look, it's not even the military assistance. It's the support, it's the endorsement, it's the
Right.
acknowledgement. We did the right things. It wouldn't have cost you a penny, and you threw it away.
KT, let me get one more question. We have a legal analyst, Joe DeGeneva. I know you know of Joe if you don't know
Joe,
him
yeah.
personally. And Joe, on the other day, said that, when it comes to what happened in Benghazi, the question seems to be who was ordered to stand down and who was relieved of their command because they apparently did not want to stand down. He says that's where the story is headed. Can you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that what the Congress should have done was appoint a special prosecutor a long time ago, and then just let the special prosecutor do the job, come back in 6 months and say, here's what we found and here's who we're going to hold responsible. I think, though, that in addition to what Joe's saying is there was no rescue. Why? Why did we leave Americans in harm's way and not even try to rescue them? There's a second question, which is, what were those contractors doing there in the first place? They call it a consulate. Well, consulates look for lost luggage and give visas. They don't look around. They're not part of military operations. And so were we doing something in Benghazi that we didn't tell the Americans?
At the annex, perhaps, yeah.
Were we running guns? There's been that sort of underlying in the shadows rumors that for the last year, what we're really doing there was running guns, Egyptian, from Libya through Egypt.
Going to
Syria.
who is the question?
Were they going to the Syrian rebels?
Good question.
That's an Iran-Contra story.
Well, KT, you said that those are the two questions. There actually is one third question.
What difference at this point does it make?
We got to answer that question too.
Well, that's why if there's a special prosecutor, there would be a political problem for a presidential candidate.
Thanks, KT McFarland.
Bye.
Always a pleasure, KT.